Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News. Today is Sunday, the second day of June, 2024. Let me tell you, the situation now in Israel with respect to Hamas, the plan of Joe Biden to get a ceasefire, is getting more confusing by the minute. We'll explain what's going on. And again, we're having details being shared that just don't make any sense. And we'll explain why that is. I'm sure you'll see it as we go through them. So, our first headline is that Israel accepts the tentative ceasefire conditions. This is from an aide of Benjamin Netanyahu. I remember Netanyahu yesterday said that no, we want all our goals to be met, including the destruction of Hamas and the prisoners back. And yet now we're told they would accept the first phase of this tentative ceasefire. If you recall that, 6 weeks of non-fighting, some prisoner exchange, the more humanitarian aid into Gaza. But the fighting would not, and again, according to Biden, then there'd be a second phase where they talk about a permanent ceasefire. And Netanyahu says, no, we're against that. But now it seems he wants to basically do the first phase. Israel agreed to a tentative ceasefire deal laid out by Biden that calls for the release of all the hostages, an aide to Netanyahu confirmed. They accepted Biden's framework deal, which calls for a ceasefire in the Israeli-Hamas war, the release of all the hostages held by Hamas, an aide to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told Reuters today, Sunday. In an interview with Britain's Sunday Times, Ophir Falk, Netanyahu's chief foreign policy advisor, said there are still details to work out and, quote, it's not a good deal, but we dearly want the hostages released, all of them, close quote. Okay, therein lies the problem. Falk added that the Israeli objectives includes the release of the hostages, here we go, and the destruction of Hamas as a genocidal terrorist organization. Those goals remain unchanged, according to Falk. According to Falk, Netanyahu remains firm in his position that a permanent ceasefire will not be reached until all of Israel's objectives are met, including the destruction of Hamas. Well, that wasn't Biden's plan. Biden's plan was in the second phase, you move towards a permanent ceasefire, and then you go on from there. And so, again, it seems like what they're saying is, well, we'll accept the first phase of the plan, the release of the hostages, and negotiate that, but we won't negotiate a permanent ceasefire. Now, here's the question. You think Hamas is going to go for any of this? What motivation do they have? All right, we'll release some of the hostages, are really our ace in the hole, are really the cards that we hold, the main ones, and then we'll go back to fighting so you can kill us all and take over Gaza, and we would be out of a job and out of most of them wouldn't be living anymore. And so it just doesn't seem to make sense whatsoever. Because remember, the article goes on to say Hamas had previously provisionally welcomed the Biden initiative. Biden's speech included positive ideas, but we want to make this to materialize within a framework of a comprehensive agreement to meet our demands. So this comes from Hamas. Hamas wants a guaranteed end to the Gaza offensive, withdrawal of all the invading forces, free movement for Palestinians, and reconstruction aid. When they get all of that, then they say they'll release the hostages, but not until. And again, we're at loggerheads. Israel's goal and Hamas's goal are two different things. And so we will see. On the one hand, Israel will accept the first phase of the deal where there will be a ceasefire for 6 weeks. And during this time, some of the hostages will be released according to Biden's plan and Israel's plan. Hamas says no prisoner release until there's a permanent ceasefire. And as always, we see the devil is in the details, and it's very hard to see how all this can be worked out. But now there's a second problem. Headline number 2. Smotrich, Ben-Gvir refused Biden's ceasefire proposal, threatened to leave the government. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich and National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir both said on Saturday night that they would not agree to U.S. President Joe Biden's proposal and threatened to leave the government if his plans were accepted. Smotrich said on a post on X, formerly Twitter, I just spoke with the Prime Minister and made it clear that I will not be part of a government that agrees to the proposed outline and ends the war without destroying Hamas and bringing back all the hostages. He added, we will not agree to stop the war before Hamas is destroyed. We will not accept undermining the achievements of the war so far by withdrawing the IDF and allowing Gazans to return to the northern part of the Gaza Strip. We will not permit the wholesale release of terrorists who might return to murder Jews. He demanded the continuation of the fight until Hamas is destroyed and all the hostages return. That should be our goal. We see the creation of a completely different security reality in Gaza and Lebanon, return of all the residents to their home in the north and the south, and massive investment in the accelerated development of these areas. That's Smotrich. And this guy is very sharp and very good in what he is saying. Now, Ben-Gvir said on Saturday, the deal and its details were announced today means the end of the war and the abandonment of the goal to destroy Hamas. This is a reckless deal which constitutes a victory for terrorism and a security threat to the state of Israel. He stressed that agreeing to such a deal is not an absolute victory, but an absolute defeat. We will not allow the war to end without the complete eradication of Hamas. If the Prime Minister proceeds with this reckless deal under the conditions published today, which means the end of the war and abandoning the goals to destroy Hamas, his party will dissolve the government. Ben-Gvir warned, and they can do that. They have the members. You have to have members 61 in this coalition. It's a parliamentary system, 120 seats. Ben-Gvir puts them over the top with his group. If he pulled out and Smotrich pulls out, they don't even have the 60. And so his government, by nature, by definition, would have to dissolve. All right. So anyway, here's where we're at. You got on the one hand, weirdly, that Netanyahu is going to agree to the first phase. Why Hamas would agree to something like that is beyond me, and they won't. They've already said they would not, especially when you keep saying our goal is destroying them. Now we have somebody else chiming in, and this is very important too. Somebody we're missing here quite often, because we hear every Saturday the families of the hostages shouting, "We need an agreement today. Release the hostages. Give up whatever it needs to be given up. Peace now. We want our loved ones back." And you can certainly understand that. But there's another group to be heard from, and that's headline number 3, the bereaved families. We will not agree to any capitulation of Hamas. The Gevurah Forum demands an urgent meeting with the War Cabinet regarding the outline of the proposed deal with Hamas. Bereaved families of the Gevurah Forum sent an urgent letter today, Sunday, to the members of the War Cabinet and demanded an urgent meeting with them following the presentation of the deal for the outline of the release of the hostages. Here's what was written. We, the members of the Gevurah Forum's management, are addressing you as representatives of hundreds of families of the fallen in the Swords of Iron War. Our loved ones went to battle and did not return. They went to battle with a deep sense of mission for all the citizens of Israel, with a clear goal, Israel's victory. The goals of the war in which we are in the midst of were well defined by the Prime Minister and the cabinet members: the destruction of Hamas's terrorist organization, the return of all the hostages, and ensuring there be no threat to the citizens of Israel from the Gaza Strip. In one word, victory. That's what Netanyahu said. That's what they wanted. According to them, the victory is supported by an overwhelming, and this is true, majority of the people. The victory bloc and the Knesset comprise over 80% of the members of the Zionist and nationalist parties. This is a clear, decisive statement of what the people's will is. The government in Israel has only one mandate: victory. Unfortunately, according to various publications, which have not yet been clearly denied by the Prime Minister or members of the Security Cabinet, Israel has agreed to capitulate to Hamas. An outline that will not bring peace to the children of Sderot in the south, an outline that will not return our brothers and sisters who are hostages, an outline that leads murderous terrorist organization to threaten all the citizens of Israel, an outline that endangers Israel's security. And that's what they wrote to Netanyahu and the cabinet. They're absolutely correct. Why do these soldiers die? Why are they all going into Gaza if they're going to pull back and the same old will return? Now, what's really interesting, from the United States, of all people, there is one voice that keeps speaking out in favor of Israel, going against the grain, and that's Senator John Fetterman, the Democrat from Pennsylvania. He says Biden's ceasefire proposal isn't meaningful peace. Hamas has to be destroyed. Now, here's a Democrat, a leftist, saying this. And he gave this interview to Fox News. He said, basically, I've been very clear. I'm going to follow Israel in this situation. I do believe that Hamas needs to be destroyed and needs to be followed to the end until there's absolute surrender, until they're either in exile or brought to justice or eliminated. One way or another, there's not going to be any meaningful peace so long as Hamas is able to operate. This is perfect. He's exactly right. And so, this is what logic tells us. This is what rationality tells us. And so we will see. So let's sum up what's going on here. Here's the upshot of what's happening. The U.S. is running Israel's campaign. namely limited fighting in Rafah. And that's another story. We'll do that next time. There's a Wall Street Journal story that we're going to do that basically said the hands of Israel were tied by Biden, as we've mentioned that, to fight in Rafah a limited war with threats. If they did anything more than that, the U.S. gave various threats to Netanyahu, which we don't know what they are. But anyway, the 6-week ceasefire, here's the upshot here, and to get some of the hostages back. It doesn't seem likely that Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, in fact, they won't agree with that, unless you're going to get the collapse of Netanyahu's government. Add to this the statements of the bereaved families. Hey, what about us? Aren't the lives of our sons and daughters meaningful? They went and fought here in Gaza and they died, for what? For nothing. And then, of course, John Fetterman's statement is the most rational of them all. So if Biden's plan is enacted, then these people died in vain. That's the long and short of it. So the sad thing is how Joe Biden seems to be telling Israel exactly what they cannot do. And there's still many, many unanswered questions. And there's not a clear word from Netanyahu how Hamas would agree to some type of plan when Israel says that the end goal is their destruction. Hamas is saying just the opposite. We're not going to release any hostages until you agree to a permanent ceasefire, until you leave Gaza, until you sign all these agreements. You're not going to get any hostages back. So that's where we're at right now. There's a stalemate, and we'll see how this all turns out. So keep praying. Again, remember, our books are free online in our website, Educating Our World, 25 Signs. We're near the end. That one particularly talks about in the last days, sign 11, how the United States is not a player, that we're not, and we aren't. We're looking so weak and so, here we're backstabbing our friends. And it's just terrible. And so this is one of the indications that we won't be there to be on Israel's side when this invasion eventually takes place. And we're seeing that happen right now. Anyway, again, everything is free, Educating Our World, and 65 books total, 12 on Bible prophecy, and over 400 videos. Everything's free. Please take advantage of. And we'll be with you later with the latest to find out what's gone on since this morning, because it's very, very confusing. You've got this group saying this group saying that. We'll see if Netanyahu holds the line, and let's see what Hamas does. But again, it's all up in the air right now. So that's the latest. I'm Don Stewart. Thanks for watching. Until next time, may the Lord richly, richly bless.